Pearline Barton's hands trembled as she smoothed down the ivory silk of her wedding gown, the culmination of all her hopes and dreams in dusty Willow Creek, Arizona Territory, 1875. Her reflection in the cracked mirror revealed a woman she barely recognized, poised, sophisticated, about to become Mrs. Harrison Thornfield, the most eligible bachelor this side of the Mississippi. 15 minutes, Miss Barton, called Mrs. Winslow through the church anteroom door. Your father is waiting to escort you down the aisle. Thank you, Pearline replied, her voice steadier than she felt. At 21, she was finally escaping the hardscrabble life that had claimed her mother far too young. Harrison offered security, position, and a fine brick house on the edge of town, everything a sensible woman should want. So why did her stomach twist with each tick of the clock? The church bells began to toll, marking the hour of her transformation. Pearline gathered her bouquet of desert wildflowers, took one last look at the young woman in the mirror, and stepped out to meet her father. Horace Barton, weathered and worn from decades ranching under the Arizona sun, offered his arm with uncharacteristic formality. You look just like your mama, he said gruffly, the closest he'd come to sentimentality in years. Thank you, Papa. Pearline squeezed his arm, grateful for the steadying presence as they positioned themselves behind the church doors. Through the wood, she could hear the scratchy notes of the piano, Mrs. Holloway pounding out the wedding march with more enthusiasm than skill. The doors swung open to reveal the modest church filled to capacity. Harrison stood at the altar, his tailored suit and slicked back hair marking him as different from the rough-hewn townsfolk filling the pews. His business partner Samuel Fletcher stood beside him, watching Pearline with an intensity that made her skin crawl. She forced her feet forward, matching her steps to the halting music, one foot after another, toward the future she had chosen. Harrison's thin smile never reached his eyes as she approached, but Pearline reminded herself that passion wasn't everything. Practicality had its own rewards. Reverend Thompson cleared his throat. Dearly beloved, we are gathered here today. The church doors crashed open. Stop. The single word echoed through the suddenly silent church. Pearline whirled around, her veil fluttering, to see a tall figure silhouetted in the doorway. As he stepped into the light, gasps rippled through the congregation. The stranger was covered in trail dust, his clothes worn but of good quality. His face, half hidden beneath several days' growth of beard, was tanned and weathered, but his eyes a startling blue locked onto Pearline with an intensity that stole her breath. You can't marry him, the stranger said, his voice deep and steady despite the pistol Harrison's men were now drawing. Who in God's name are you? Harrison demanded, stepping forward. From the front row, an older man with a silver star pinned to his vest rose slowly. Sheriff Wade Coleman studied the newcomer with narrowed eyes. Nathan Blackburn, the stranger announced, removing his hat. And I've come to stop this wedding. Murmurs swept through the church as Pearline steadied herself against her father's arm. The name meant nothing to her, yet something about those piercing blue eyes triggered a flutter of recognition she couldn't place. This is outrageous, Harrison sputtered. Sheriff, remove this man at once. Sheriff Coleman remained rooted in place, his weathered face grave. Let him speak. The cowboy Nathan took another step forward. Miss Barton, he said, his eyes never leaving hers. That man isn't who you think he is. I've never seen you before in my life, Pearline managed, though the words felt strangely hollow. Nathan's jaw tightened. No, madam, you haven't. But I knew your mother. The church erupted in whispers. Horace Barton stiffened beside her. My mother died when I was 12, Pearline said, her voice unsteady. Yes. Nathan nodded solemnly. And before she did, she made me promise something. Harrison strode down the altar steps. This is absurd. I won't stand for Harrison Thornfield isn't his real name. Nathan interrupted, his voice carrying through the church. His real name is Howard Trent. He's a swindler who's been working his way through mining towns across the territory, marrying women of property and disappearing with their assets. Fletcher moved toward the cowboy, hand hovering over his gun. You're lying. Am I? Nathan's gaze remained steady. Sheriff, I've got wanted posters in my saddlebag, and a letter from the federal marshal in Tucson. The sheriff motioned to his deputy. Check it out. As the deputy hurried outside, Harrison's face hardened. This changes nothing. Miss Barton and I are to be married. There's more, Nathan said, turning his attention fully to Pearline. The man standing beside you, Samuel Fletcher, he's actually Harrison's brother. They work together. After the wedding, after the property is signed over, you'd have disappeared, just like the others. Pearline's knees weakened. That's not possible. Your mother knew men like them. Nathan continued, his voice gentling. That's why, before she died, she made arrangements with my father. She wanted to ensure you'd be protected. The deputy burst back into the church, waving papers. He's telling the truth, Sheriff. Got the posters right here. Howard Trent and Samuel Trent. Wanted in 3 territories. Harrison or Howard made a sudden lunge toward the side door. The sheriff moved with surprising speed for his age, blocking the exit with his pistol drawn. Don't try it, Trent, Coleman warned. Chaos erupted as Fletcher drew his weapon. A shot rang out, and women screamed. Nathan tackled Pearline and her father to the ground as bullets splintered the pews around them. Stay down, Nathan ordered, drawing his own revolver and returning fire. The exchange was brief but violent. When the smoke cleared, Fletcher lay wounded, clutching his shoulder, while Howard was face down on the church floor, the sheriff's knee in his back as he applied handcuffs. Someone fetch Doc Miller, Coleman shouted. And someone else help me get these vermin to the jail. Nathan helped Pearline to her feet, his strong hands steady on her trembling arms. Are you hurt, Miss Barton? She shook her head, unable to form words as she stared at the man she'd nearly married, now revealed as a criminal. What did you mean about my mother? She finally managed. What arrangements? Nathan glanced around at the chaos of the church. This isn't the place. May I call on you tomorrow? There's much to explain. Horace Barton stepped forward, his face ashen. You come to our ranch at noon, Mr. Blackburn. Seems we have a lot to discuss. The following day, Pearline sat stiffly in her family's modest ranch house sitting room, her wedding dress replaced by a simple blue calico. The events of the previous day had left her hollow-eyed and sleepless. Her father paced by the window, watching for their visitor. He's here, Horace announced as a horse and rider appeared on the dusty trail leading to their home. Nathan Blackburn looked different in the harsh light of day, cleaned up, shaved, his clothes fresh. Without the trail dust and urgency, he cut an impressive figure as he dismounted, tying his horse to the hitching post. Pearline's father met him at the door. Mr. Blackburn. Mr. Barton. Nathan removed his hat. Thank you for seeing me. Horace nodded stiffly. Come in. The men entered, and Pearline rose to her feet, noticing how Nathan's eyes softened when they landed on her. There was something in that gaze, not presumption or hunger like she'd seen in Harrison's eyes, but a quiet reverence that unsettled her in an entirely different way. Miss Barton, he greeted her, inclining his head. I hope you're recovering from yesterday's ordeal. As well as can be expected, she replied, gesturing to a chair. Please, sit down and explain what this is all about. Nathan settled himself, hat in hand. I should start at the beginning. My father, Joseph Blackburn, was a lawyer in Tucson. 12 years ago, he was approached by Elizabeth Barton, your mother. Pearline exchanged a quick glance with her father, whose face had grown stony. She came to make her will, Nathan continued. She was already ill, knew she didn't have much time. But she was worried about something specific, your future, Miss Barton. My mother never mentioned any lawyer, Pearline said cautiously. Nathan nodded. She wouldn't have. She wanted to protect you both. From what? Horace demanded. From men like Howard Trent. Nathan's expression darkened. Your mother was unusually perceptive, Miss Barton. She knew the value of your ranch not just as it was then, but what it would become. It's just scrubland, Horace protested. Barely enough grazing for our cattle. It's also directly above what might be the richest silver deposit in the territory, Nathan replied quietly. Your mother suspected as much. She had a background in geology before she married. Did she ever mention that? Pearline's breath caught. She used to collect stones. Called them her treasures. She knew, Nathan confirmed. And she feared that once she was gone, unscrupulous men would try to swindle the property from you. So she made an arrangement with my father. What kind of arrangement? Horace's voice was dangerous. Nathan met the older man's gaze directly. A marriage contract. Silence descended on the room like a physical weight. She betrothed me? Pearline finally whispered, anger rising through her shock. To a complete stranger? Not exactly, Nathan clarified. The contract specified that when you turned 21, I was to come assess the situation. If you were happily matched or married, I was to walk away. The contract would be void. But if you were in danger of being coerced or swindled, you were to intervene. Pearline finished, her mind reeling. Yes. Nathan ran a hand through his dark hair. I've been tracking Howard Trent for months. When I discovered he was courting you, I knew I had to act. Horace slammed his fist against the wall. This is outrageous. Elizabeth had no right. Papa, Pearline said softly, placing a hand on his arm. Let him finish. Nathan reached into his jacket and withdrew a weathered envelope. Your mother left you this. I was to deliver it only if circumstances required my intervention. With trembling fingers, Pearline accepted the letter, recognizing immediately the elegant handwriting that had labeled her childhood books and written her bedtime stories. Her mother's hand, reaching to her from beyond the grave. I'll give you privacy to read it, Nathan said, rising. Mr. Barton, perhaps you could show me your water situation? I noticed your South Creek seems to be running low. Her father hesitated, then nodded grudgingly, leading Nathan outside. Alone, Pearline broke the seal on the envelope and unfolded the delicate pages. My dearest Pearline, if you are reading this, I am long gone, and you have met Nathan Blackburn under circumstances that have likely left you confused and angry. For that, I am deeply sorry. What I cannot be sorry for is my determination to protect you. By now, Nathan will have explained about the silver beneath our land. Your father never believed me. He saw only the struggle of coaxing cattle from unforgiving earth. But I knew what lay beneath, and I knew what it would mean for you both once I was gone. Nathan is the son of a good friend, a man of honor and principle. I have watched him grow from boy to man, and I know his character. The arrangement I made was not to force you into marriage, my darling girl, but to ensure you had a champion when you needed one most. The choice is entirely yours. If you wish for Nathan to leave and never return, he will honor that. The contract dissolves at your command. But I ask only that you consider the possibility that I have sent you not just a protector, but a partner worthy of the remarkable woman I know you will become. Trust your heart, Pearline. It has always been your surest guide. With eternal love, mother tears blurred Pearline's vision as she folded the letter. Outside the window, she could see Nathan standing with her father by the corral, pointing toward the distant hills, their conversation seemingly civil despite the circumstances. Nathan Blackburn was nothing like she'd expected. Not a fortune hunter or opportunist, but a man who had ridden for days, risked his life, to fulfill a promise made to a dying woman. A promise about her. When the men returned, Pearline had composed herself, though the letter remained clutched in her hand. Mr. Blackburn has some interesting ideas about redirecting the spring water, her father announced gruffly, which Pearline recognized as reluctant approval. My father was fascinated by irrigation techniques, Nathan explained. I picked up a few things. Pearline met his gaze. Thank you for bringing me my mother's letter. You're welcome, he replied, his expression careful. I hope it provided some clarity. Some, she acknowledged, though I still have questions. I'll answer anything I can. Her father cleared his throat. I'll see to the horses, he said, making a clumsy exit that left them alone. Pearline gestured for Nathan to sit again. This contract, are you bound by it? Did you come here out of obligation? I came because I gave my word, Nathan answered honestly. My father died 3 years ago, but before he did, he entrusted me with your mother's request. I've been watching over you from a distance, making sure you were safe. For how long? She asked, startled. Since you turned 18, he admitted. Just periodic checks. I have a small ranch near Tucson. And now? What happens now that you've fulfilled your promise? Nathan's blue eyes held hers steadily. That depends entirely on you, Miss Barton. The contract your mother drew up doesn't obligate either of us. It simply provided legal protection for my intervention if it became necessary. So you're not here to claim me as a bride? Pearline clarified, a strange mix of relief and something like disappointment coursing through her. I'm here because Howard Trent is a dangerous man who has left a trail of heartbreak and ruin across the territory, Nathan said firmly. And because I made a promise to your mother. What happens next is your choice. Pearline studied him, this stranger who somehow didn't feel like a stranger at all. I don't know you, Mr. Blackburn. No, he agreed. You don't. But I'd like the chance to change that, if you're willing. Before she could respond, hoofbeats thundered into the yard. Through the window, Pearline saw Sheriff Coleman dismounting, his expression grave. Her father met him at the door. Sheriff? What brings you out here? The Trent brothers escaped last night, Coleman announced without preamble. Killed my deputy in the process. Nathan was on his feet instantly. How? Had help, the sheriff spat. 3 riders hit the jail at midnight. They're heading south, but I've got reason to believe they're not done here. He turned to Pearline. Miss Barton, Howard made some threats before he escaped. Specific threats against you and your father. Fear clutched at Pearline's heart. What kind of threats? The kind a man doesn't repeat in front of a lady, Coleman said grimly. But he seemed particularly fixated on making you pay for humiliating him. Nathan's face hardened. You'll need to leave the ranch, both of you. It's too exposed out here. This is my home, Horace protested. I won't be driven off by threats. It's not just threats, Nathan countered. These men are killers. They've already murdered your deputy, he added, nodding to the sheriff. And they know this property is valuable. They'll be back with more men. Coleman nodded. Blackburn's right. I'm organizing a posse, but until we catch them, you're not safe here. Where would we go? Pearline asked, practical despite her fear. Nathan didn't hesitate. My ranch near Tucson. It's defensible, remote, and they don't know about it. That's a 3-day ride, Horace objected. We'll take the stagecoach as far as Mineral Springs, then cut across country, Nathan countered. We can be there in 2 days if we push. The sheriff nodded. It's a good plan. I can escort you to the stage station tomorrow morning. Pearline looked between the men, feeling control of her life slipping away once again. Don't I have any say in this? 3 pairs of male eyes turned to her in surprise. Of course you do, Nathan said, his voice gentling. But the danger is real, Miss Barton. These men won't stop until they get what they want or until they're caught. Pearline took a deep breath. Very well. We'll go to your ranch, Mr. Blackburn. But I want it understood that we are under your protection, not your authority. A hint of admiration flashed in Nathan's eyes. Perfectly clear, Miss Barton. Dawn broke hot and orange over the eastern hills as Pearline secured the last of her hastily packed belongings. She'd slept little, kept awake by the armed men her father had posted around the ranch house, and the knowledge that somewhere out there, Howard Trent was planning his revenge. Nathan appeared at her bedroom door, hat in hand. The wagon's ready whenever you are, Miss Barton. She nodded, gathering her courage along with her carpetbag. I'm ready. Outside, Sheriff Coleman and 3 deputies waited on horseback. Her father was already seated in the wagon, rifle across his knees, his expression grim. We'll take the north road to avoid town, Coleman explained. Stage is making a special stop for you at Cottonwood Creek Crossing in an hour. The journey to the stagecoach passed in tense silence, every man scanning the horizon for signs of pursuit. Pearline found herself studying Nathan's profile as he drove the wagon, noting the serious set of his jaw and the watchful alertness in his posture. He was nothing like Harrison Howard with his smooth words and practiced charm. Nathan moved with the natural confidence of a man comfortable in his own skin, asking nothing of her but offering everything in his protection. At Cottonwood Creek, the stagecoach was waiting as promised. The sheriff helped them transfer their belongings while Nathan spoke privately with the driver and shotgun messenger. I've explained the situation, Nathan told them as they prepared to board. They'll be extra vigilant. Sheriff Coleman clasped Nathan's hand. I'll send word to Tucson when we've caught them. Godspeed. The stagecoach journey was hot and dusty, the cramped quarters shared with a traveling salesman and an elderly couple heading to visit their daughter. Nathan sat beside Pearline, his solid presence both reassuring and unsettling. Each jolt of the coach sent her shoulder brushing against his, each touch a reminder of how quickly her life had changed. I never thanked you properly, she said quietly, when the other passengers had dozed off in the afternoon heat. For stopping the wedding. Nathan glanced at her, surprise evident in his eyes. You don't need to thank me for that. Nevertheless, she persisted. You saved me from a terrible fate. His expression darkened. I almost didn't make it in time. I'd been tracking Trent for weeks, but he moves quickly. When I learned he was in Willow Creek courting a young woman named Barton. He shook his head. I rode day and night. How did you know my mother? Pearline asked, the question that had been lingering since his arrival. Nathan's features softened with memory. She used to visit my father's office regularly, not just about legal matters. They shared an interest in geology. I was just a boy then, about 15, but she always took time to ask about my studies, bring me books she thought I'd enjoy. That sounds like her, Pearline said softly. She loved knowledge, always had her nose in a book. Papa used to tease her about it. She was a remarkable woman, Nathan agreed. Ahead of her time in many ways. Did she really suspect there was silver on our land? Nathan nodded. She brought samples to my father. They were rich with ore. She didn't want to tell your father until she was certain she knew how skeptical he was of book learning, as he called it. But she told you and your father? She wanted independent verification before approaching your father, Nathan explained. And then she fell ill. After that, her priority became ensuring your future was secure. Pearline glanced at her father, snoring softly across from them. He never knew. No. She asked us not to tell him unless absolutely necessary. She feared he might make hasty decisions if he knew, perhaps sell to the first mining outfit that made an offer. The realization of how thoroughly her mother had tried to protect them even from her father's impulsiveness struck Pearline deeply. She thought of everything. She tried, Nathan agreed. Though I doubt even she anticipated Howard Trent. At Mineral Springs, they changed to fresh horses and continued south. The terrain grew increasingly rugged, saguaro cacti standing like sentinels against the crimson sunset. We'll stop in Mariposa for the night, Nathan informed them as the stagecoach rattled toward the small settlement visible in the distance. It's the last town before we cut cross-country to my ranch. Mariposa consisted of little more than a general store, saloon, stables, and a small hotel. Nathan secured rooms for them at the latter one for Pearline and another for himself and Horace. I don't like stopping, her father grumbled as they ate a simple dinner in the hotel's dining room. Makes us sitting ducks. Traveling at night through Apache territory would make us dead ducks, Nathan countered mildly. We'll leave at first light, be at my ranch by sundown tomorrow if we push the horses. Pearline picked at her food, fatigue and worry dulling her appetite. What if they're following us? The sheriff is watching the main roads, Nathan assured her. And tomorrow we'll be taking trails few people know about. Despite his reassurances, Pearline slept fitfully, waking at every creak and footstep in the small hotel. She rose before dawn, dressing quickly in her most practical traveling clothes, a sturdy brown skirt and white blouse, with a leather vest her father had given her for riding. Nathan was already in the hotel lobby when she descended, 2 steaming cups of coffee in hand. He offered one to her with a small smile. You look ready for the trail. I am, she confirmed, accepting the coffee gratefully. The sooner we reach safety, the better. Her father joined them moments later, and they departed Mariposa as the first golden light spilled across the desert. Instead of returning to the stagecoach, Nathan led them to the livery where 3 saddled horses waited. We'll make better time on horseback, he explained, helping Pearline mount a gentle-eyed bay mare. And we can take routes a stage can't follow. The day unfolded in a rhythm of hoofbeats and harsh beauty as Nathan led them away from the main trails into the wild backcountry. He set a steady pace, mindful of Pearline's endurance, though she proved a more capable rider than he might have expected. My mother taught me to ride before I could walk, she explained when he commented on her skill. Said a woman in the territory needed to handle herself in the saddle as well as any man. Wise advice, Nathan acknowledged, his admiration evident. By midday, they had climbed into rocky highlands where the air was cooler and scented with pine. They paused in a sheltered grove to rest the horses and eat the provisions Nathan had purchased in Mariposa. How much farther? Horace asked, wincing as he stretched his stiff back. About 5 hours, Nathan replied, studying the position of the sun. We'll cross the Rio Verde at Serpent's Pass. Then it's open country to my place. And you're certain Trent doesn't know about your ranch? Pearline asked, voicing the fear that had haunted her throughout their journey. Nathan's expression was solemn. Nothing is certain with men like the Trents. But I've been careful. The property is registered under my mother's maiden name, and I keep to myself. They remounted and continued their journey, the landscape gradually transforming around them. The barren beauty of the high desert gave way to scattered grasslands and stands of mesquite. By late afternoon, they crested a rise, and Nathan reined his horse to a halt. "There," he said, pointing to a distant valley where a cluster of buildings nestled against the backdrop of rugged hills. Rowan Ranch. The name struck Pearline as unexpectedly poetic for this serious man. "Rowan, my mother's family name," he explained. "It was her dowry land. My father built the house for her when they married." As they drew nearer, Pearline could make out the details: a sturdy main house constructed of stone and timber, a large barn, bunkhouse, and corrals containing dozens of fine-looking horses. A stream cut through the property, its banks lined with cottonwoods that provided welcome shade. "It's beautiful," she said honestly. Nathan's expression softened with pride. "It's home." A ranch hand spotted their approach and hurried to meet them, rifle in hand, until he recognized Nathan. "Mr. Blackburn, wasn't expecting you back so soon." "Change of plans, Charlie," Nathan explained, dismounting. "These are my guests, Mr. Horace Barton and his daughter, Miss Pearline Barton. They'll be staying with us for a while." Charlie touched his hat respectfully. "Madam, sir, welcome to Rowan Ranch." More ranch hands appeared, taking their horses and luggage while Nathan led them toward the main house. The interior was surprisingly refined for a bachelor's residence, well-crafted furniture, bookshelves lining one wall, clean pine floors covered with colorful Navajo rugs. "My housekeeper, Mrs. Diaz, lives in the cottage out back with her husband, my foreman," Nathan explained. "She'll have rooms ready for you shortly." "This is quite an operation," Horace observed, his tone suggesting reluctant admiration. "How many head are you running?" "About 200 cattle, but horses are my main business," Nathan replied. "Breeding and training. The Army buys from him," Charlie added proudly. "Best stock in the territory, they say." While Horace continued his conversation with the ranch hands, Nathan showed Pearline to a comfortable bedroom at the end of the hallway. "This was my mother's sewing room," he explained. "Mrs. Diaz converted it to a guest room a few years back." The room was simply but tastefully furnished, with a wrought iron bed covered in a colorful quilt, a washstand with a porcelain basin, and a small writing desk beneath the window. "It's lovely," Pearline said, setting down her small bag. "Thank you for your hospitality, Mr. Blackburn." "Nathan," he corrected gently. "Please, if we're to be sharing a home, even temporarily, I think we can dispense with formalities." His gaze held hers, and for a moment, Pearline felt the strange connection that had been growing between them since their first meeting. Not just gratitude or obligation, but something more elemental, as though some part of her recognized some part of him. "Nathan," she agreed softly. They stood in silence until Mrs. Diaz appeared with fresh linens, breaking the moment. Nathan excused himself, promising to show her the rest of the ranch after she'd had time to rest and refresh herself. Alone, Pearline sank onto the bed, emotions finally catching up with her. In the span of 3 days, she had nearly married a criminal, discovered a secret arrangement made by her mother a decade earlier, fled her home, and now found herself at the ranch of a man who was, by all practical measures, still a stranger. Yet Nathan Blackburn didn't feel like a stranger. There was something about him, his quiet competence, his straightforward manner, the way his eyes seemed to truly see her, that resonated with her in ways Howard Trent never had. She opened her carpetbag and withdrew her mother's letter, rereading the flowing script until she had it memorized. "Trust your heart, Pearline. It has always been your surest guide." But what was her heart telling her? And in the midst of danger and uncertainty, could she trust it at all? The days at Rowan Ranch fell into an unexpected rhythm. Pearline, accustomed to the constant work of her father's struggling cattle operation, found herself surrounded by efficiency and prosperity. Nathan ran his business with quiet authority, respected by his men and admired in the region. Her father, initially standoffish, gradually warmed to Nathan as they discussed ranching techniques and breeding programs. Within a week, Horace was riding out with the hands, offering his experience with the hardier desert-adapted cattle he'd raised. Pearline found her own place in the household, working alongside Mrs. Diaz in the garden and kitchen, exploring the well-stocked library, and learning about the horse breeding operation that was clearly Nathan's passion. "This filly has the best bloodlines in the territory," Nathan explained one morning as he showed her the stables. "Her dam was my first real success, sold her offspring to governors and generals." Pearline stroked the velvet nose of the young horse. She's beautiful. What's her name? Haven't settled on one yet, Nathan admitted. I like to wait until their personalities develop. That's wise, Pearline agreed. Names should mean something. Nathan studied her for a moment. My mother would have liked you very much. The simple statement touched Pearline deeply. I wish I could have known her. And your father? They sound like remarkable people. They were. Nathan's voice held the gentle pride of a son who had admired his parents. They taught me that integrity matters more than profit, and that promises are sacred. Is that why you came for me? Pearline asked, the question that had lingered since his dramatic entrance into the church. Because of a promise? Nathan leaned against the stable door, considering his answer carefully. I came because of a promise, yes. But I stayed because of you. Heat rushed to Pearline's cheeks. You don't know me. I'm learning, he countered softly. I know you're intelligent and observant. You notice which horses need extra grain and which hands haven't been sleeping well. You're kind to Mrs. Diaz, but won't let her coddle you. You read history books and poetry with equal interest. Pearline stared at him, startled by how closely he'd been paying attention. You've been watching me. Yes, he acknowledged without apology. Just as you've been watching me. She couldn't deny it. She'd found herself studying him, the way he spoke softly to frightened horses, how he listened intently when his men brought problems to him, the slight furrow between his brows when he read in the evenings. What are you looking for? She asked, surprising herself with her boldness. Nathan's blue eyes held hers steadily. The woman your mother knew you would become. Before she could respond, Charlie appeared at the stable entrance. Rider coming, boss. It's Sheriff Coleman. Nathan straightened immediately, his expression shifting to alertness. Stay here, he told Pearline. I'll come for you once I know what news he brings. Pearline watched from the stable as Nathan strode to meet the dust-covered sheriff who was dismounting in the yard. Their conversation was brief and intense, with Nathan's posture growing increasingly rigid. Unable to contain her anxiety, Pearline hurried to join them, arriving just as her father emerged from the bunkhouse. What's happened? She demanded. Nathan turned to her, his face grave. The Trent brothers ambushed the posse near Apache Wells. 2 deputies were wounded, one fatally. Lord have mercy, her father muttered. They got away, Sheriff Coleman added grimly. But we found evidence at their camp that confirmed our worst fears. They're gathering men. One of the wounded deputies overheard them talking about taking back what's theirs and mentioned the Barton ranch specifically. How many men? Nathan asked. 7, maybe 8 by now, the sheriff replied. All hard cases. Pearline's blood ran cold. They won't stop, will they? No, Miss Barton, I don't believe they will, Coleman said apologetically. These men are desperate and dangerous. Howard Trent has apparently convinced his gang that there's silver on your land worth killing for. There is, Nathan said quietly. Your mother was right. Horace stared at him. What are you talking about? Elizabeth found silver on your property 12 years ago, Nathan explained. She had it verified by an assayer in Tucson. The samples were rich, possibly indicating one of the largest deposits in the territory. Why wasn't I told? Horace demanded, his face flushing with anger. She intended to tell you, Nathan said calmly. But her illness progressed too quickly. After she died, my father and I kept the secret as she requested, watching over Pearline from a distance. Until Howard Trent appeared, Pearline finished, understanding dawning. He must have somehow learned about the silver. Sheriff Coleman nodded. According to our information, Samuel Trent worked for a mining survey company 5 years back. They had old geological reports that identified your region as promising. So it wasn't random, Pearline whispered. He targeted me specifically. I believe so, Nathan confirmed grimly. And now that he's been exposed, he's desperate. Men like Trent don't accept defeat. What do we do? Horace asked, his anger giving way to concern. Nathan exchanged a look with the sheriff. We prepare. They'll come here eventually. They know we left Willow Creek. And it won't take much asking around to find out I have connections to the Bartons. My ranch is defensible, he continued, his mind clearly working through the problem. Good sight lines, solid buildings. With enough warning, we can hold them off. I've sent for reinforcements from Fort Bowie, Coleman added. But it will take time for them to organize a proper force. How long? Nathan asked. A week, maybe more. Nathan nodded grimly. Then we have work to do. The next days passed in a flurry of preparations. Nathan sent his youngest ranch hand to alert neighboring properties, called in men who owed him favors, and organized round-the-clock watches on the approach routes to the ranch. The women and children from the surrounding homesteads were gathered at Rowan Ranch for safety, with the main house converted into a communal living space. Defenses were constructed, supplies stockpiled, and weapons cleaned and loaded. Through it all, Pearline worked alongside Nathan, her natural organization and calm demeanor making her an unexpected asset in the crisis. She managed the household arrangements, inventoried supplies, and even practiced with a rifle under Nathan's patient instruction. "You're a natural," he told her after she hit 5 targets in succession. "Your mother would be proud." "She taught me to shoot too," Pearline admitted. "Papa didn't approve, but she insisted. Said a woman alone needs to protect herself." "She was right," Nathan agreed, his expression somber. "Though I wish you didn't need these skills now." "We can't always choose our circumstances," Pearline replied, ejecting the spent cartridges from her rifle with practiced ease. "Only how we face them." Nathan's gaze lingered on her face. "Your courage continues to amaze me, Pearline." The use of her given name, rare despite their growing closeness, sent warmth through her that had nothing to do with the Arizona sun beating down on them. "Not courage," she corrected softly. "Necessity." That evening, as the ranch settled into an uneasy vigilance, Pearline found Nathan alone on the porch, staring out at the darkening landscape. "You should rest," she said, joining him at the railing. "You've barely slept in days." "I'll sleep when this is over," he replied, though the exhaustion was evident in the lines around his eyes. "That's what my father always says," Pearline observed, "right before he falls asleep in his dinner." Nathan's mouth quirked in a brief smile. "Is that a subtle hint that I'm being stubborn?" "Not so subtle, perhaps," she acknowledged, returning his smile. They stood in companionable silence, watching as stars appeared in the deepening blue of the sky. The ranch was quiet, save for the soft murmur of voices from the bunkhouse and the occasional whinny of horses in the corral. "I never asked what you want," Nathan said suddenly, turning to face her. "After all this is over." Pearline considered the question. "I don't know anymore. 2 weeks ago, I thought I wanted security and position, the things Harrison Howard seemed to offer. A comfortable house in town, respectability. And now I understand those things are meaningless without truth behind them," she said slowly. "I want something real. Something built on honesty and mutual respect." Nathan's gaze intensified. "And the silver? If we survive this, your father's ranch could become one of the wealthiest properties in the territory." "The silver doesn't matter," Pearline said firmly. "It never did to me. It was only ever a means to an end." "What end?" Nathan asked softly. "Freedom," she answered simply. "The freedom to choose my own path, to help others, to live authentically." Something shifted in Nathan's expression, a deepening of emotion, a certainty that hadn't been there before. "Pearline," he began, his voice husky with feeling. A shout from the watchtower interrupted them. "Riders approaching. East Trail." Nathan was instantly alert, reaching for the rifle propped against the porch rail. "Get inside, alert the others. It's starting." The next hours passed in a blur of organized chaos. The approaching riders weren't the Trent gang, but a family fleeing from a neighboring homestead that had been burned by men asking about the Bartons. "They're close," Nathan told the assembled defenders grimly. "No more than half a day behind. 8 men, heavily armed." 9, corrected the exhausted farmer. "One's a Mexican, scarred face. Mean looking." "Vargas," Sheriff Coleman muttered. "Hired gun from Sonora?" This just got worse. Nathan surveyed the group, 14 men, including himself, Horace, the sheriff, and the neighboring ranchers. "We're outnumbered, but we know this land. We'll use that advantage." Through the night, they finalized their preparations. The women and children were secured in the stone root cellar beneath the main house, with provisions and a hidden escape tunnel that led to a cave in the nearby hills. "I should be with you," Pearline argued when Nathan tried to persuade her to join them. "You're needed here," he countered. "If things go badly, someone has to lead these people to safety." She knew he was right, but the thought of him facing Howard Trent's gang without being at his side filled her with dread. "Promise me you'll be careful." "I promise," he said solemnly. On impulse, She reached up and kissed him not on the cheek as propriety might dictate, but fully on the lips, pouring into the gesture all the emotions that had been building between them. Nathan's surprise lasted only a moment before he responded, his arms encircling her waist as he deepened the kiss. When they finally parted, both breathless, his eyes held a fierce light. "I'll come back to you," he vowed. "See that you do," she whispered. Dawn broke with agonizing slowness, the first golden rays illuminating a ranch prepared for siege. Men were positioned strategically throughout the property, with clear lines of fire and reinforced cover. The attack, when it came, was more calculated than they had anticipated. The Trent gang split into two groups, one creating a diversion at the southern boundary while the main force attempted to approach from the west. Gunfire erupted, the sharp crack of rifles echoing across the valley. Pearline, despite her promise to remain in the cellar, stationed herself at a small window in the main house, rifle ready, watching for any attacker who might breach their outer defenses. Through breaks in the gunsmoke, she caught glimpses of Nathan directing their defense, moving from position to position with calm authority. Her father fought alongside him, the two men working in unexpected harmony. The battle raged through the morning, neither side gaining clear advantage. Two of Nathan's men were wounded but continued to fight. One of the attackers lay motionless in the open ground between the barn and the corral. Near noon, there was a lull in the firing. A white cloth appeared, waving from behind a rocky outcropping where several of the gang had taken cover. "Barton," a voice called out. "We just want to talk." Nathan signaled for his men to hold their fire but remain vigilant. "That's Howard," Pearline whispered to Mrs. Diaz, recognizing the smooth, cultured voice that had once promised her the world. "Barton," Howard called again. "The girl doesn't have to get hurt. Just sign over the mineral rights, and we'll leave peacefully." "That's not going to happen, Trent," Nathan shouted back. "There are army troops on their way from Fort Bowie. Your only chance is to surrender now." A harsh laugh was the response. "Always the honorable man, aren't you, Blackburn? Let's see how honorable you feel when we burn you out." Fresh gunfire erupted, more intense than before. Through the chaos, Pearline saw a flaming arrow arc toward the barn roof. Another followed, and another. "They're trying to burn the ranch," she cried, abandoning her post and rushing toward the door. Mrs. Diaz tried to stop her. "Miss Barton, you can't go out there." "The horses are in that barn," Pearline responded, pulling free. "And there are wounded men in the loft." Before the older woman could protest further, Pearline slipped outside, keeping low as she ran toward the water pump. Other defenders had seen the danger too. Charlie and one of the neighboring ranchers were already organizing a bucket chain. Pearline worked the pump handle frantically, filling buckets that were passed along to douse the smoldering roof. Around her, gunfire continued, but the Trent gang seemed focused on their incendiary attack rather than targeting the bucket brigade. She was so intent on her task that she didn't notice the figure moving along the edge of the corral until he was almost upon her. Looking up from the pump, she found herself staring into the cold eyes of Samuel Trent. Well, he drawled, leveling a pistol at her chest. "If it isn't the reluctant bride." Pearline froze, her hand still on the pump handle. "Samuel, you're coming with me," he said, gesturing with the gun. "Nice and quiet. My brother has unfinished business with you." "I don't think so," came a deadly calm voice from behind him. Samuel whirled to find Nathan standing 10 paces away, his own revolver aimed steadily. "Drop it, Trent," Nathan ordered, "or I'll put a bullet through your heart." Samuel's eyes darted between Nathan and Pearline, calculating his odds. "You won't risk hitting her." "I won't have to," Nathan replied evenly. "You'll be dead before you can pull that trigger." The standoff stretched for what seemed an eternity, the sounds of battle continuing around them. Then, with frightening suddenness, Samuel swung his gun toward Nathan. 2 shots rang out almost simultaneously. Samuel staggered, a look of surprise crossing his face as he dropped to his knees. But Nathan also jerked backward, clutching his shoulder. "Nathan!" Pearline cried, rushing to his side as Samuel collapsed face down in the dirt. "I'm all right," Nathan grimaced, blood seeping between his fingers. "Grazed me." From the direction of the main firefight came shouts and the thunder of approaching hoofbeats. For a terrible moment, Pearline feared reinforcements for the Trent gang had arrived. Cavalry, someone yelled. It's the army. Sure enough, a column of blue-coated soldiers appeared on the ridge, rifles at the ready. Their arrival turned the tide immediately. Several of the attackers threw down their weapons while others attempted to flee, only to be quickly captured by the disciplined troopers. Howard Trent was among the last to surrender, his fine clothes dirty and torn, his handsome face contorted with rage as he was dragged before Sheriff Coleman. "You've failed, Howard," Nathan said quietly, still supported by Pearline as they approached. "It's over." Howard's eyes burned with hatred. "This isn't over, Blackburn. Not while I draw breath." "That might not be for long," Sheriff Coleman interjected grimly. "Murder of a peace officer carries the death penalty in this territory." As Howard was led away in chains, Pearline turned to Nathan, her hands gentle as she examined his wound. "You need the doctor." "It can wait," he insisted, his eyes searching the ranch. "Are you hurt? Is everyone else safe?" "Yes, thanks to you," she assured him. The fire's contained, and the army arrived just in time. Relief flooded his features, followed quickly by exhaustion as the adrenaline of battle faded. Pearline guided him to a bench outside the main house, where the army physician was already tending to the wounded. "You saved my life," she said softly as they waited for the doctor to reach them. Again, Nathan's good hand covered hers. "You were saving others when Samuel found you. Your courage continues to humble me." The doctor pronounced Nathan's wound painful, but not serious. The bullet had carved a furrow along his shoulder without penetrating deeply. With proper cleaning and bandaging, he would heal completely. In the days that followed, the ranch slowly returned to normal. The army escorted the Trent gang to Tucson for trial, with Howard and the surviving members facing charges of murder, attempted murder, and arson. Sheriff Coleman brought news that the attack had an unexpected consequence. Word of the silver deposit had spread, and mining companies were already making inquiries about the Barton property. "You'll need to file proper claims," he advised Horace, "and get good legal representation before talking to any of these companies." "I know a thing or two about mining law," Nathan offered, "if you'd like my help." Horace regarded the younger man thoughtfully. "Seems I owe you that much and more. You saved my daughter and probably my life." "I didn't do it for debt or obligation," Nathan replied honestly, his gaze moving to Pearline, who stood nearby. "No," Horace acknowledged, following his gaze. "I don't believe you did." As the summer heat gave way to the milder temperatures of early autumn, decisions had to be made. The Barton ranch needed attention, and mining negotiations couldn't be conducted entirely from afar. "We should return home," Horace announced one evening at dinner. "The Trents are imprisoned awaiting trial. The danger has passed." Pearline nodded, though the prospect of leaving Rowan Ranch and Nathan filled her with a sense of loss she hadn't anticipated when they'd arrived as virtual refugees months earlier. After dinner, she found Nathan in the stables, checking on the filly they had discussed that first week. The young horse had grown noticeably, her gangly frame beginning to show the elegant lines that would make her valuable. "Have you named her yet?" Pearline asked, leaning against the stall door. Nathan smiled. "I was thinking Promise." "It suits her," Pearline agreed, reaching out to stroke the filly's silky neck. "She'll honor any promise she makes, I think." "Like her namesake," Nathan said quietly, his eyes holding hers. Pearline's breath caught. "Nathan, I heard you're planning to leave," he said, his voice carefully neutral. "Papa feels we should return to our ranch," she confirmed. "There's much to do, especially with the mining interest." Nathan nodded, his expression unreadable. "He's right. Your future is there." "Is it?" Pearline asked softly. "I'm not so sure anymore." He stepped closer, close enough that she could see the flecks of darker blue in his eyes. "What are you sure of, Pearline?" "That I don't want to leave you," she admitted, the words spilling out before she could reconsider them. "That somewhere between your dramatic entrance at my wedding and facing down Howard Trent's gang together, I found something I wasn't looking for." "And what's that?" he asked, his voice husky. "You," she said simply. "The truth behind my mother's faith in you. The man who keeps his promises, who sees me as I am, who values courage and honesty above all else." Nathan reached out, his fingers gentle as they traced the line of her cheek. "I made a promise to your mother to protect you. I intend to keep that promise for the rest of my life, if you'll let me." "As your obligation?" Pearline asked, needing to be certain. As my wife, he corrected softly. If you'll have me. Joy bloomed within her, bright and perfect. Are you proposing to me in a horse stable, Nathan Blackburn? A smile transformed his serious face. It seemed fitting somehow. We both value substance over appearances, don't we? We do, she agreed, stepping into his embrace. And yes, I will have you obligation, promise, and all. Their kiss was sweeter than the first, a seal on a covenant more binding than any legal contract. When they finally parted, Nathan rested his forehead against hers. I should speak to your father, he said. He already knows, Pearline assured him. He may be stubborn, but he's not blind. He's seen what's grown between us. And he approves? He said, and I quote, "At least this one came with references from Elizabeth," Pearline laughed, "which, for my father, is practically a blessing." They were married that October in the small church in Willow Creek, the same building where Howard Trent had nearly claimed her as his unwitting victim. The symmetry was not lost on Pearline as she walked down the aisle on her father's arm, this time toward a man whose eyes shone with genuine love. Sheriff Coleman attended, as did many of the neighbors who had stood with them against the Trent gang. Mrs. Diaz wept openly, while Charlie and the other ranch hands stood awkwardly in their Sunday best, hats clutched respectfully in weathered hands. The mining negotiations eventually resulted in a partnership that made both the Barton and Rowan ranches prosperous while preserving the land they all cherished. Horace divided his time between the properties, though he increasingly preferred the comfort of the guest house Nathan built for him at Rowan Ranch, especially after Pearline gave birth to their first child, a daughter they named Elizabeth, in honor of the woman whose foresight had brought them together. On quiet evenings, Nathan and Pearline often sat on the porch, watching the sunset paint the distant mountains in shades of gold and crimson. Sometimes they spoke of the dramatic events that had led to their union, but more often they discussed their hopes for the future, the children they would raise, the land they would nurture, the legacy they would build together. "Do you ever wonder what might have happened if you hadn't arrived in time that day?" Pearline asked once, her head resting against his shoulder. Nathan's arm tightened around her. "I couldn't have been late. I made a promise." "To my mother," she acknowledged. "And to myself," he added, pressing a kiss to her temple. "The moment I saw your picture in my father's study, I knew you were someone worth keeping promises for." "Even then?" she asked, surprised. "Even then," he confirmed. "Though I couldn't have imagined how much you would come to mean to me." Their life together wasn't without challenges, drought years that tested their ranching skills, the ordinary conflicts of marriage, the perpetual vigilance required of frontier life. But through it all, the foundation remained solid, a union built on respect, honesty, and promises kept. Years later, when their children were grown and the Arizona Territory had become a state, Pearline found the letter her mother had written, carefully preserved in the family Bible. Reading it again, with the wisdom of experience, she was struck anew by her mother's insight. "Trust your heart, Pearline. It has always been your surest guide." Her heart had led her to Nathan, just as her mother had hoped. And in following it, she had found not just security or position, but a love as vast and enduring as the western sky.